Hi guys, I want to do a talk on religion and defend it against the people that have high platforms in YouTube. Christians, backslidden Christians, whatever, have political mind. We think out of the square. And if you deny the Bible, then you're always going to get history wrong or see things wrong. Just because a leader of a church appears to be a Jesuit or doesn't mean that the whole church of 1 billion people is out of whack, doesn't mean the 1 billion people are brainwashed. And then there's the other 1 billion that are backslidden in other denominations. So we're talking about 2 billion people in the world. So we're talking about 1/3 of the population. Then you've got maybe 1 billion other religions. So half the world is religious. And we're finding ourselves on both sides. A lack of knowledge. It could be that Catholics don't read the Bible and need to read the Bible more, need to read Revelations and the prophecies of the end times. It doesn't mean to say that we're in end times, but globalisation and receiving the microchips, which the 4,000 Swedes have done, which I mentioned on another tape, is a concern for the future. And if we go into end time scenario, we're only setting it up for the evil guys who are doing all sorts of things. Trump has got a bit of a control on pedophilia. The problem is that people like the Clinton Foundation were funding Epstein Island indirectly through companies. All sorts of companies have been funding the Clinton Foundation. It's all linked to pedophilia. A lot of the people funding it had no idea. They were doing a pay-for-play so that when they gave to the Clinton Foundation, they received business. And the Clintons had good access to the third richest guy in the world, George Soros. So there was a big pull, and all over the world, people wanted to be a piece of that. And a lot of corruption, because they used to send politicians over to Epstein Island, put a underage girl in their bed, film it, and then that guy would do what they want. So when Trump got in charge, when Trump went into power, there were people on both sides who were working for we'll call them globalists. I could call them New World Order freaks, but also call it globalism. And a lot of people probably don't know, but if you're being blackmailed for something crazy like that, there's something really, really wrong going on in the world. And I don't think Christians are very aware. I mean, I've been talking to people in New Zealand, and they thought that Trump had kids in cages. No, that happened under Obama. But unfortunately, our media is brainwashing people in New Zealand to think that Trump did it. He was just newly in power, and then all of a sudden people saying kids in cages, taking videos and pictures of that time. They're also saying that Trump is a racist, a homophobe, and we supported black youths and held up the gay flag before he was in power. So all these things are false. All this false information from CNN, which you see in every airport, which is, they used to call it the Clinton News Network under Mockingbird. The CIA had control, and CNN is definitely brainwashing tool, and most of the media in New Zealand, Australia and America all come under the same umbrella. So we have to be aware, and Christianity is not aware of what's happening because the media is not really telling them what's happening. They think globalism is going to be good, that the people in control of United Nations will rule us fairly. There's major corruption now. I mean, pedophilia was rife within United Nations, and the people funding United Nations setting it up, and not just pedophilia. I guess they were trying to stop some of the wars, but under George Soros, he was funding those wars because the banking industry that wants to set up United Nations, those countries didn't even have the banking that they wanted. They had their own banks and doing their own thing. So they need elite banks in there, international banking, because they're set up throughout the world. And the big, when we borrow money as a country, you're borrowing. We can borrow from countries, but a lot of the time you're borrowing from elites, or so you owe them money, and they own your reserve bank. It's kind of pay for play there as well with each country. You sell your assets, you do all these requirements. You sell your assets, then the corporations have more control over your country. And the more control that a corporation has, and these are global companies, because every company wants to be global and control the market, and goes quite insane unless you have a government-controlled bank. We've been a little bit lucky because most of our banks are owned by Australia, Australian-owned banks. They do come under, and they've been attacking fees, bringing the fees down. I mean, I used to pay $20 a month. Now I only pay about $2 or $3. So there are some good things, but Australia protects us a lot. I mean, New Zealand. Oh, one good thing New Zealand's done, we've refused 5G. So there are some good things. We do vote policies. They might be a little bit liberal, but you've got a common sense party in there called New Zealand First. So I don't think, even though they're liberal, I don't think they have fully aware of what's happening in the world. In New Zealand, I mean, we might be a globalist country, but we're just not fully aware. We did give to the Clinton Foundation, but we don't know that the government didn't know about what's happening on Epstein Island, didn't know that Bill Clinton was one of the people that was going there to have sex with underage people, and Epstein was jailed on Epstein Island, but Bill Clinton gave him a pardon. It's like, well, Bill was one of the people that was going to the island. How can he pardon him? Or he would arrange the pardon or something. But the guy only got a year because he's in the in the circle, where he's framing all these people, and that's part of the problem of Epstein Island is, if you want to be in the inner circle, the Clinton circle, they've got to get a bit of dirt on you. And Trump knew that before he got into power. The judicial system was just rife, and that had to be clean first before you can have a clean out, because the judicial system was just voting everything out. Trump would try and do something and just vote it out. So I'm hoping, hearing that Trump, these conspiracy theories, I mean, it seems like the right's divided between people that think that everything's evil, Trump is evil, he's just part of the system. It's like, well, I don't believe that. I'm an optimist. There's pessimists and there's optimists. I'm an optimist. I mean, I believe that Trump's a good guy just on his actions, that he does mean well, that he does care. He cares about armed forces. He genuinely cares about it, armed forces and police, and he cares about veterans. So his actions have been good actions, and he had a bit of sin in his past, and what guy doesn't? I mean, come on, guys. I mean, you know that you're not any better. Some of you may have had a saintly life. I would like to, record your life and send it to me, and I'll analyze it. Guys know that Trump wasn't fully into doing bad stuff. He owned businesses and other stuff, but he has. The past of a guy is not overly important, and whether he converted to Christianity, that's another issue. But in the White House, they had Bible studies. Mike Pence was there, Sessions. And so there is a lot of hope in the America And Christianity needs to be aware that nationalism, there's a war between nationalism and globalism. Once nationalism gets destroyed, then globalism takes over, then you have no say, you have no power. You've got all these unelected globalists in United Nations doing laws that have nothing to do with your country, and they just want control. The banks want control, the corporations want control, they want to get rid of little businesses. China wants more control over the world, wants to own land, to send back raw products from everywhere, set up ports on the land, set up raw product timber. They're getting iron sand from our country, they're getting timber, they're getting live sheep, so they can process it all back in China, which removes all the high paid jobs. And at least New Zealand is actually trying to fix that solution. So we do have, there is some hope in New Zealand. And some of the other countries, I mean, we might be a globalist country, but we still realise that we need our own laws, and we don't really want United Nations to rule us, because corporations need rules. They need for each country, so they don't just they don't abuse wages, everything else. So that's one good thing about the West, is we have higher wages. But if you have too many immigrants in a country, they can bring the wages down, and that makes it hard. If they accept lower wages all the time, they have to accept the same wages that. So if you have, say, like New Zealand's got 4 million people, or suddenly you put 2 million more people in New Zealand, then you're starting to become like South Africa. Now there's another issue. South Africa, their white people cannot get shop jobs now. They're not allowed to get jobs. So a lot of people having to leave South Africa. And if that happened worldwide, there would have to be a revolution, that the white people would have to stand up and say, look, we need jobs. You can't do this to us. And then they have shops in South Africa that say no whites allowed. No whites allowed. So you've got racism going the other way. I mean, I can't see that happening in New Zealand, because it does. I mean, it does help that people intermarry, that white races intermarry with brown race and black race. Then you'd have no problems. And in New Zealand, it's like that. So it does help intermarriage, mixing races, that kind of thing. I like to make that my. I think I started out at religion and ended up in politics again. Sorry about that. But anyway, thanks for that. Bye. And if you can, guys, just subscribe and like my tapes, like my videos. Thanks. Bye.